Okay, so this is game 2 from basically the previous game. This happened right after the last game. Uh, the teammates are a little bit different. The map is also different. But a lot of the initial thoughts from before the game starts are pretty much about the same. All I can say, I guess, about Santa is that Santa really likes using Scorcher, but that's not really applicable on training grounds. Yeah, I'll just get right into it. Try to make this one a bit faster. We're on East, the East server. Well, looks like most of our team has pretty good ping. I'll skip forward a bit. Proclaim it in your name. So I generally like to prioritize the hill because the hill here. Well, actually no. I actually like to prioritize Embar, but it just also has hill. So yeah, we're playing up here kind of together. Sounds like we have 2 from Flexys' POV. We have position. It's really hard to push in a lot of places on this map. And this is no... this area is no different from a lot of the map. So basically in training grounds, there's like some areas that are super open. And then if the areas aren't super open, they're also super choked. So this is a choke. This is kind of a choke. Both of the stairs on either side going up to like, the God spot or whatever they're both pretty long chokes. That push over there is also a choke. We know there's a player here and there's a player that went up in here, so the car needs to be a little bit careful about being flanked from the wide right side. But at the moment, in my position, I really like where I am because I have cover against both of these players, and I also have hill position. I'm in no rush to pick up and play for Embar or to push anyone because I'm getting points right now. And if they want to make any kinds of plays somewhere to push me and or Flexys or whatever, we can get a lot of initial damage on them, and they feel like that damage is too strong for them to push up. So they didn't decide to make a move into the ring, and instead one player decided to sit here and the other went up, around to maybe try to flank or get crosses on the other side of the map. Just sort of okay. I don't mind that so much. The Karn, I think the Karn should consider putting pressure on the Embar pickup depending on what's happening with the player up here. If the player up there is actively kind of crossing and has their attention, on the other side of the map, then the Karn would have a better ability to see that happening than I would on the other side of the cover. They'd be able to use their vision and their audio cues to see what's happening there, and then they're the ones that put themselves in a position to put pressure on the Embar pickup. So even if the Lonnie is like they're ready to cross whoever picks up Embar. So right now, the consideration is what this player is doing. And if they're crossing over there, then the Karn puts pressure on the Embar immediately. And then if the player is actively flanking, then the Karn needs to consider putting themselves in a position where they get a lot of damage on the player who's going to push up to try to flank the Karn and maybe or try to get a pseudo 2v1 on wherever the Karn is on sort of this side or around here. Or if they move up close enough and the Karn feels too pressured, then the Karn can back up to the other teammate where I am. And we can kind of sit in the back of the hill together. And then they would be naturally split. And if they want to get back together again, then this player would have to go have to make it up the stairs and all the way around to come around this side if they want to push together. Or this player could push the Karn back behind and they would go all the way around and then get up here, and then they'd have to try to coordinate some kind of push together. But right now, that push is not very good. Neither is the split push. If the Lonnie pushed here and the other player pushed down here, neither of those pushes are very good. But the Karn is now in the position where they can force a kind of play to happen, right? They can put themselves in a position to cross or take a 1v against this player up here if they feel like they have the opportunity or a good chance to win the fight there, or put themselves on like the M-bar pick up and try to push this play, basically. We could also try to coordinate to try to 2v1 like the Lonnie, but that isn't as good unless we have pretty good information on sort of what's going on and we're able to coordinate, which we're not really able to. If the Karn were to start playing up on the Lonnie, then I would feel pressure to try to help out the Karn. But if the other player up here turned around and started crossing down this lane, then our push on the Lonnie is much more problematic. But we have no reason to like push anyone really. It's just that they are a 4-stack. We don't have a 4-stack. So if we do have an ability to 2v1, that would be one of the considerations that we'd make. So it makes that decision seem a little bit better because our numbers, us pushing our numbers advantage is worth a little bit more in that situation. But the Karn decides to sort of pressure up here. Otherwise, their push towards the Lonnie should look a lot different than this. But this is probably the last thing that I would consider in the Karn's position, because you're going to take a lot of damage from the Lonnie. The Lonnie is doing way less damage than they should be, even with a snub out. But cutting in up through here is like, I don't know, it's really weird. Okay, so they end up, and I don't think the Karn was necessarily thinking about this, but if they take some pressure, then I'd feel like I'd want to take as much of that advantage as I can as possible. So if I feel like I have maybe a little bit of space, and also kind of what I was suggesting, if the Karn sort of looks like they were trying to push towards the Lonnie or getting closer to the Lonnie, then I would feel pressure to move up to try to help out. And that's sort of what I did. The other thing that happened is that the Karn moves up, takes some damage, and then I feel like I should try to move up to see if I have a look at anything, at any opportunity for anything. So maybe I can get like a 3-point shot on the Lonnie, and if I have that and I'm not taking damage from the other player that went up in a god spot, then I'd probably much more seriously consider playing up on the Lonnie to try to kill them. So yeah, that's what I did. I tried to take the advantage as well as I could, while the Lonnie was, you know, kind of occupied with putting pressure on the Karn. And I moved up, but then the Karn started moving away. So I'm like, nope, I'm in a really bad position. I don't want to get 2v1s. There's no reason to really give this up. So I'm going back to the cover here. And then this player decides to cut back down immediately. And now we're not really in a position to deal with that, unfortunately. I had spent a lot of time looking at the Lonnie and then making sure I got back to cover because I'm split from my teammate right now. So they ended up completely missing the shot. I'm going to get damage on Mario. So at this particular moment, the Karn is now in a really good position to play up on Mario or this Dom. Because they've taken a decent amount of damage, probably. And they're interested, at least right now, they seem to be more interested in trying to get away and staying alive. Yeah, and so they end up going down. And now I'm, you know, obviously trying to get damage on Lonnie and staying alive. It's not a whole lot to say there. Give more time for my teammate to move up. Yeah, we end up getting the clean on the Lonnie. Now we need to be putting pressure on the M-bar. There's no... So probably could have hopped over immediately to put pressure on the M-bar pickup, and then as soon as he started throwing nades or whatever, he'd probably be able to back up. I guess there's a small window that if you decided to start picking up the M-bar and the nades were thrown at the right time, then you could get stuck in that, and yeah, that would be bad. But at least start playing up a little bit to start putting pressure on the M-bar pickup. Even if you're going around the side, you don't have to be hopping over. You're putting pressure on it and forcing them to, consider using stuff like frags or trying to fly through the smoke or whatever to try to prevent the M-bar pickup. And if you're, on the edge of smoke or whatever, and they're running through, and you have an advantage on the player that's running through smoke. Something like that. But yeah, this is pretty okay too. Having numbers advantage is really important to hold the back. Should know that the Justin player has dropped now, but we have position and man advantage now on the map. And that was drop. We have, a lot of pressure on them. They, without having their entire team up, and the hill being like mostly dead. In the words of Miracle Max from The Princess Bride, mostly dead, but not all dead. I guess Justin decided to make the risky play in a 3v4 and trying to get a kill with the drop. Probably because as they were running up with drop, they got inactive with it and wanted to use it. So that's probably what was going on there. But realistically, especially on a map like this, where it's extremely favored towards the defenders of next hill, very, very early hill rotations are extremely important. And then also pickups are extremely important because you don't have very many looks for pushes on next hills or hills in general. So the 2 drops there could have been very effective if they were able to rotate and get to where the next hill is and sort of stay alive with it. They might have been able to do a lot more with it than in this situation, unless there was like a down on a player and then another player got to the down and then revived them, and then they got double killed by the drop, and they use 1 drop to get rid of those 2 players, and they kill another player, and then they're able to like 2v1 the last player on the current hill. But even then, it's like it still makes more sense to try to play for next hill, because this hill is, in this situation, the hill is completely dead. On this map, so the corner hills, once they hit like 40, you kind of want to be rotating the next, because the corner hills, so the top corner hills are worth like 40 for rotation. The bottom corner hills are like 30. This hill is like 30 or 35, something like that. The only hill that you don't really rotate earlier towards, because you usually have ways of getting around and getting position, is just the center hill on the other side of the map from where we are right now. That's the only hill, because that one can be contested relatively easily and kind of neutralized. It takes some time to be able to get to contest it, but it's not like the one team is going to be holding the vast majority of the points very easily. Like almost the other 5 entire hills are on the map. So basically, since this hill is at like 35 or so around when you use the drop, it's like maybe use 1 if you're able to deny a lot of the remainder of the points. But you're not really going to want to be playing for this, because the next hill is worth so much. Like I said, it's worth like a 45 rotation, 40, 45. You really want to make sure that you're there before the other team, almost regardless of what the score is. But it's like basically, 40 or 45. So they probably will die. The Santa will probably clean them. I don't know what will happen with the drop. They're moving up to the pillar where the drop is killed or downed. Okay, so I guess the drop player ended up getting revived. That's crazy. And killed the player that downed them. Yeah, we want to be, as Karn, we want to be moving up to try to help out teammates with whatever damage or kills we could potentially get, because this hill is pretty much dead. And the only reason why we'd be sitting on it is if we can be sitting on it and helping out in a fight. Otherwise, if we're trying to push an advantage that we can, any advantage at all, it's that advantage is worth way more than the amount of points left on this hill, because again, this hill is like super dead, and you want to be playing for next. But they actually got the kill and are actually trying to 3-man push from this side on a hill that's dead. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really weird, but I guess they decided to do this. Very timely down. If a down happens anywhere near where this player has their strong cover, then they have a really good chance at least trading themselves out. They got the gib and rolled away, and I guess they were staying alive even longer than that. It's kind of crazy. So the other drop is used. We have a kill on a player. They're having a lot of difficulties coordinating this push. This player was able to stay alive when they probably should have been traded. They should have been able to kill this player. I'm in a really good position over here to get a cross on a lot of them. And so I guess that's why I'm here, to try to help with the fight instead of making it going over to next, because they've committed so many players over here. Yeah, and it looks like one's trying to like rotate over, but they'd have to kind of get by me. They're not past me. Or they weren't past me before, you know. They do end up killing me. I guess I got 2v1'd over there. We should have had well, I mean, that's weird. Yeah, I mean, I guess Santa died. They had a player over there that was blocking kind of this spawn before this ended up like popping up as next. Yeah. Look, you had a really good look at getting a kill or something like this, which is absolutely worth going for. Yeah, as long as they stay on that cover, if you want, you also have another really good look at exactly this. Maybe taking a 4-point shot, but having a really good chance at only needing to connect with like 4 or 5 pellets to get a down or a gib. Yeah, that's also really good. So that's why when you're in that Dom's position right here, when you're crossing, you want to be extra cautious and aware of any players that are around at the bottom here, because as soon as they start moving up, they actually make it up these stairs to this position much sooner than you might realize. And yeah, if you do take a really good hit here, you're sort of stuck in this position, because if you take enough damage, you don't feel like you can back up past the stairs, because they can just LD over the ledge here. So that's why every time I'm in this situation where I'm like crossing players here, I need to always be looking down here to make sure that a player doesn't come up to this point uncontested. Because as soon as I'm shooting this and I see someone starting to come up, I'm coming off the wall and swapping to a shotgun. And if they get a shot off, then hopefully I can get like, you know, a lot of damage on my right hand, and then maybe be able to like take the fight here. But definitely don't want to get run up on and then one shot, and then definitely don't want to get run up on and then take a 4-point shot without dealing damage back to them, just pretty much because of that situation that happened. You kind of get stuck in that. So you just super ultra careful about that. And this is a very consistent thing. This is something that I know to like play around, basically, to just be watching there. So yeah, I mean, we're technically up a player. This push is really awful. Like I said, it's, you know, Training Grounds is a pretty bad map. It's kind of worth, you know, a 45-point rotation or whatever. It's one of the strongest defensive hills in the game. Arguably, the other hill is a little bit stronger because of where you get right hand. The places where you get right hand are stronger than the places that you get right hand on this hill, but both of them are extremely strong to defend. Having a 4v3 here means that it's like super go time, and we really want to be in position to be throwing util and pushing together. Hopefully. Yeah, I had a really good opportunity to move up on the Lonnie. They got like no damage. So this is also another good push, just like pushing on the Dom. So this is a good push. Yeah, and we're able to kind of get together and get revives, even though, you know, you got third down. That's okay. The two initial kills are worth so much, especially the one on the Lonnie. I end up getting killed. So now they have a player advantage there. And now, like I said, these hills are worth like 40 to 45 or so. So at this point, you need to be considering pickups, because there's so much time left on the hill that pickups are likely going to be up before the hill has finished. So you're pretty much going to be looking at pickups, but also making sure that they don't have any position towards next, basically. Because next is the opposite corner, and even the short spawn for opposite corner is kind of long, and at least in terms of distance. And even if they push from that direction, as long as you have the next location, it takes a long time to kind of push through there. So, yeah, it's like a balancing act between whether it makes sense to move up to play for pickups at certain points, depending on where the other players are on the map, or putting yourself in a position to hold off the rotation to next. But that's the situation that we're kind of in right now, at least from this perspective. Because even if you get these kills, they will, I mean, this corner is probably going to be blocked, so they're almost guaranteed to be spawning like top left. But that's already like short, basically, to next hill. So them dying here isn't worth as much, because even if you like kill them all and you get on the hill, yeah, that's a good chunk of time. But like I said, in my value estimate in comparison, we're past this point being worth holding compared to having position on next. But yeah, I mean, I guess we're, you know, committing to this. I think enough players had rotated over here. But I'll tell you, I definitely, personally, I don't want to be playing this hill. So yeah, they have Embar, and they've spawned either around Embar or where next is. So they have position on that. Very, very cavalier by the Embar player. They're moving up here. They should not have moved up here at all. Embar and anyone else should have been over where next is. Completely. Just not like end of discussion. So I guess when the dust has settled, we have kind of like maybe somewhat of an even fight over here at next. I'm not really sure. But yeah, already having a player here on this right hand and another player on this this cover spot means that you pretty much have won this hill at this point. If the other team had prevented both of those from happening, then they would have this hill. Even though, you know, at this exact moment in time, they're getting points off the hill and we're not. And they end up being completely alone, just like they were with Embar up top over there. They were completely alone with Embar. And now we have kills and pretty much the ideal setup for at least 2 players on the hill. And I guess 1 more drop, with the drop player being around where we are. And this player had already given up on the push down here, because while the Baird or Cowboy was up here kind of like mulling around or messing around or whatever, they were just standing there and getting Lancer damage the entire time. So they weren't interested in pushing up to try to help the Baird. They assumed that the Baird was just going to die, and yeah, and then that's that. They're just trying to hold. And now this player is doing a lot of the same thing. There was no coordination at all. They just, on their own volition, they just decided to push forward. They threw a flash and they thought, oh, maybe I might be able to get a little bit more space here, but you can't make pushes like this on your own on this map against almost anyone, but especially in a higher level lobbies. You have to have help, and it only makes sense to use utility to try to do that when the utility is not going to just help you. It's going to help the rest of your team, which is why it's important to kind of hold utility for when your team is ready to make a push and you can see that your team is ready to make a push. Otherwise, you're kind of, you know, wasting utility and wasting time. That was a pretty good drop. I don't know if they had the time necessarily to try to get a really good look at a double kill. It was probably a non-active, and they're just sort of like, oh, okay, I have the ability to do that. And they, I think they were probably just slow to shooting it, because if they weren't slow, I think that was, even with a non-active, probably a free double kill. But it was a pretty good decision anyway. But in retrospect, or like in hindsight, if you're only going to get 1 kill with the drop there, it would be worth more to keep the drop up for whenever the full push is by the other team. So you can use it to, you know, get kills and completely deny the entire push pretty easily, instead of just killing 1 and then denying a little bit of time. Moving up here doesn't make any sense. You know, pushes are really bad across pretty much the entire map, and this is no different. If you're like trying to take a 2v1 or 3v1 while they're split or whatever, then that could make a little bit of sense, but you need to make sure that you have a teammate with you, because again, like, pushes on almost around the entire map are really bad. So yeah, yeah. So I ended up trying to take advantage of it, but I don't think there was any consideration on the part of the Karn of whether or not a teammate was going to follow up and try to help at all for this push. I think they're just hoping, really. I think that's a good word to use. They're hoping that a follow-up or a coordination was going to occur. But there's no, like, TACOMing and then looking at how large the teammate symbol is behind them and whether the teammate symbol is moving relative to their screen moving, or just looking around a little bit with their screen to see if a teammate's moving up with them at all. None of that happened. So I think it was just extremely hopeful that like a 2v1 was going to happen. but it did end up working out. And this is a really nasty off spawn. If they're around here, this is a super nasty angle. And this is one of the very rare occasions where you're relatively far from teammates, but the damage that you get and the angle that you get from this crossing location is worth so much that getting damage and then moving closer to teammates and then getting damage on the window to the left of you and then moving closer to teammates isn't as much of a consideration. It's something you can absolutely be doing and probably should be doing, but you don't have to be doing that because of how valuable these angles are, especially from this spot particularly, because it's like a 90-degree cross from this area behind where the Karn model is right now, which is basically up to in front of where the hill is, basically at the bottom of the circular thing and in front of where the L cover is over here, basically. You can get a lot of meaningful damage on those players and put a clock on them, really. So it forces them to push up into or make pushes that they really wouldn't want to do because it leverages the defensive capabilities, I guess, of the covers around the hill. So I would heavily consider staying here as well. I mean, you could be moving up to the window when the entire screen is devoid of any obvious targets of getting damage. But I think it's completely reasonable and justified, especially with the time on the hill as well, to consider sitting here. But in terms of prioritization, you always want to be focusing on the player who's in the front. That's on the screen. And of course, in this frame, it's a little bit more obvious that the only target you can get any damage on is this one, Reimato. But I would hope that in the next several frames after I play this, that the aim switches to this player, because you could potentially get damage on them, and they're the furthest progressed to the hill. Yeah, so that happened, and then we're back to the Dom. Now the Dom decided to move forward, and they're pretty split right now too. It's also interesting. Yeah, taking a lot of damage. Obviously you can get into cover, but another thing to consider in this position, obviously you don't want to go down, especially when you don't have teammates anywhere remotely close. But what you can do, especially on this cover, because it's directly facing the player that's crossing, is you can be blind firing over the top. And even if it's not super meaningful damage, it does absolutely help with the damage, and also helps increase the amount of time it takes for any of the players that take hits to regen any at all. Even if you're doing, 0.1% damage per bullet, as long as you're stopping their regen, that's very valuable in and of itself. And you can get a lot of reasonably good hits even while blind firing from this range while you're waiting for your health to regen. But also, I would say you could also consider moving to the other window now. Yeah, because you get closer to teammates while you're taking damage. And then also you're not dealing as meaningful damage. So while you're waiting for your health to regen, so you can maybe do more meaningful damage again, you're closer to teammates. So your damage is maybe a little bit more meaningful because you're kind of closer to teammates and closer to where the enemies are pushing, because they're pushing teammates, right? Yeah, that was good. I like that too. Was considering the blind fire, started blind firing, then saw an opportunity to get damage on them. You have some health to work with, but of course you want to be a little bit yeah. And actually in this situation, you could consider, even if you're going to get a lot of pretty good damage on players that are important to get damage on, you could even consider getting downed for it, because the damage that you have on these players is worth so much more than the damage this player has over here on you. And it could be worth going down to do that, even if you just get a few more bullets on them. Because obviously they're closer to teammates and closer to a fight. So that's one really good reason. But another is that conceptually, damage and kills on players who are closer to the objective are worth more. So if you have players that are kind of on the objective and the objective is worth a lot more because you're getting points from it, not only are they closer to the objective and it's worth a decent amount because you already have the objective, but also they're closer to teammates and, you know, the objective that you have. So there's like layers of really good reasons for why all the damage that you deal to these players are worth much more than the damage that you take. And getting that down here and then not taking damage is really huge and greatly increases the success of potentially holding this. Now, at this point, I would absolutely be moving up because they have all this cover to work with. And even though they could slide to this cover, they're all, or a lot of them are very close together at this point. So your crossing damage isn't going to be anywhere near as valuable because they're together to get revives. So as soon as that player like hopped up, I would think immediately, oh wow, my Lancer damage is not very impactful now because they have cover, but not only that, they're going to get really quick revives. So I need to be putting myself in position to get more meaningful damage on the players who are pushing my teammates, and also maybe buying time to allow me to rotate to help my teammates in the fight. Because all of this few seconds, this is just like, no, I just would be flying to go help teammates. That's a pretty big down. I'd still be flying to go help teammates. Yeah, and they ended up holding, which is great. Ended up getting more meaningful damage, but I think it was probably better to like rotate over. And then, at least in this still, it's good to try to, you know, get kills or whatever, but hopefully you should be able to get M-bar and then stay alive with M-bar and then maybe be able to use M-bar to try to win next hill while we have player advantage. And they actually ended up having 2 here at the end, which is really dicey. And now they have right hand on this situation. We went down first. So if we'd, you know, rotated over here and tried to like fight together, I think this probably would have looked a lot different. And I end up hitting bricks. Now they have 3 on the current hill, and they actually have a really good look at getting M-bar. And sort of timing. It's definitely worth more to them, even though you're blocking, you know, a couple of points on the old hill. Yeah, Santa's dead. Yeah, I'd be looking to see if M-bar came up here. I'm not sure if I necessarily would have come up to this spot, but now at this particular point in time, it's not a bad spot to have. They have total control of the ring, but off spawn, I'd be looking up in the spot to see where maybe M-bar had gone, see if they were sitting up here. There's a pretty good chance that they were. They probably shouldn't be, but there's a good chance if they were. And then I'd want to try to prioritize playing for the hill, or at least playing for a side of the hill. But once they have control, now in order to retake, it would be good, like I've said previously a few times, to have at least 2 different angles to try to retake. So having an angle on this spot, and then having the main push angle to be one of the sides is really helpful, and to give your team a good chance at retaking. So there's 2 on current hill. Yeah, we're definitely, I would definitely be holding the spot right now. We're just waiting for teammates to come up and getting damage when it's sensible to do so. Also, we want to be cognizant of when players are coming off respawn, because they could easily respawn behind you, just like you might have next to M-bar. That's a really helpful down. You don't want to get headshotted. You could be blind firing here. That's good, yeah. And they just sort of crumbled. We have it down on the hill. They're going to be pushing hill. They'll probably be looking there to see if they would push the hill. Because any damage that you would get on them if they decided to move up into the hill while we had a player that was down would be worth way more than any damage that you get on this player. Because they get closer to teammates, closer to the objective, and there's a really good chance that they'd be doing that because they should know, especially as a 4-stack, they should know that there's a down there in the hill. And that was a reason why I was talking about how this cover right here, if you're going to blind fire, is good that it's more directly, I guess, orthogonal, I think is the word. Perpendicular. Orthogonal might be, yeah, well, let's just say perpendicular. I know it's perpendicular at least. Perpendicular basically to this player who was crossing from here before, the Baird from earlier. Whereas Jasutin was blind firing with the cover here that was angled basically across the host spots, basically. And so when you're around this location, you're wide enough on that side that you can get damage on the player that's blind firing. But if you blind fire here, down there, this player, because they're perpendicular from this cover, they can't get damage on you with a Lancer. Yeah, if you'd flipped over on your right side, you could have gotten a lot of damage on that player that was moving up. Anytime, so with crossing prioritization, if there is even a chance that anyone could be shot at that's underneath, so in this, when you're in this position, if they're underneath and you could get damage on them, or if they're pushing at all and you can get damage on them, that is worth way, way more than any damage you can get on someone who's like in a passive position that's crossing. And if you can't get damage on them at all, then you would shoot at this player. But the other players that are around on the ground and around the hill are prioritized so much more that it's worth dropping shooting at them to like look and see what's going on with the other players around, so that as soon as they make a move into a location where you can get damage on them, like 10% of damage on any of them that are like actively moving up towards the hill is worth like 80% of the damage on the player that's over here, right? Because like they're actually putting themselves in a position where they could very much get downed and killed, whereas this player should realistically never get downed, let alone get killed, right? So you're only shooting at them when there's nothing else to do, basically, or no one else to shoot at. And now they're third down, so the damage that you get on them is worth quite a bit more. But if there's anyone else to shoot at all at any point, like as soon as this player goes down, you want to know where that is, so that because there's a really good chance they're going to get pushed because someone wants to clean up that kill, you're in position to get damage on them because they're putting themselves in a position where the damage on them is worth so much more than, again, any damage you get on them, the person in the host spot. Now now that player's down, and now you want to be waiting to see if you could get shots on anyone who moves up, because you need to be looking around here. Yeah, they caught you off guard a little bit. You could have been preemptively aiming, assuming that someone's going to push up there. And if you started with a perfectly condensed bloom, you could get a bit more damage, which could make a big difference. Yeah, they're in hill. Out of Lancer, that sucks. Yeah, and they got spawned behind. That's kind of okay, though. All the damage that you got on them towards the end there was worth it. And it's really hard to, especially when they're directly behind you and really that far away, you can't really I mean, I said like before earlier that there's a good chance that someone could spawn behind you. But if there's people on the hill that you can actively be shooting, if it looks like there's any chance of anyone retaking it at all, that could be worth a lot. But obviously, if you were able to turn around like while you're reloading or whatever, and get and pull up your TACCOM and look at the respawn timer for the players in the game and everything, and get your bearings or like map awareness, then you have a much greater chance at being able to turn around a little bit sooner, potentially, to not give a player that comes up behind you, like, I guess, a free kill or as free of a kill, you know. Yeah, we want to be, our entire team a little while ago should have been flying towards next. Because this, even though it's the bottom corner hill and not worth as much as the top corner hills, it's still worth like I said, like 40. The top corner hills are like 45. These are like 40. So they're worth an insane amount. And these hills, we've already been, you know, it's like 32 seconds past that 40 time, right? So these players should have been way over here. And if you're in like the God spot getting cross on players who are actively in the hill already, that can be good. But these players should have had already assumed that they were not going to push a long time ago. So they would have gone towards next like 20 seconds ago. And then before you were even pushed by the Lonnie up there, got spawned behind, you would have known that it wouldn't make any sense at all to continue crossing there, because your teammates would not be there to potentially be moving up and playing up on the damage. So if they'd had rotated like 20 seconds ago or whatever, everyone would have been much more on the same page, and I probably would have been in that position a really, really long time ago as well. But now, because pushes suck, I would like to push that player, and I'm probably going to, because I kind of have to, but I really don't want to make that push, especially if I'm on my own. So it would be really good to have a teammate come and help make that push. Turning the screen over here and then like swapping to a shotgun doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because this is like assuming that there's a player that's around, and if they are, then yeah, that's a pretty high focus, but you'd want to have a Lancer out and you'd be playing this cover. You'd be shooting them, playing the cover, getting to a teammate, shooting them, maybe shooting the other player, you know, doing something like that instead of pulling a shotgun out, moving this direction, looking towards the host spot where you're not going to do anything with them, even with a Lancer or a shotgun. Yeah, that and moving closer as that team doesn't make a lot of sense. You want to be pushing this player, which is what I'm set up for. I think I'm mostly hoping for teammates to come up, because I don't necessarily want to make that push, because they have right hand and there's no cover in between there. You can get 2 full shots off before you can make it up to that corner. So the push sucks, and this map sucks, but yeah. All right, now you're moving up. Okay, that's great. Getting the flash. All right, huge. Yeah. Good flash to get your right hand. I decided to move up and probably get down so that I could get revived, because I wasn't interested in trying in getting split while I was down and wasting too much time waiting for my health to regen. It was kind of like when you have friendly fire on, you melee your teammate and then revive them. It was sort of like that. I was like, okay, I'm going to use the Lancer to try to get down so I could hopefully get revived before any major pushes happen, so I have full health and I'm in a good position instead of in the back of the hill. Yeah, this is pretty good. It's dangerous for me, but I feel pressured to kind of do that and play up there. And it would have been better if you, well, I understand wanting to sit on the hill, so I think I can go either way, but I think in general it would have made more sense to stick with me or the teammate to try to 2v1, and if the teammate ended up going down, you could get a revive, even if you miss like a few points. Because if one player goes down and you're split from them, then yeah, you have a decent chance of helping clean them up. But they have a safe spot down there underneath the big wall. So I don't know. It would have been better to play together. And I feel like I want to try to take another fight while they're split. Probably gonna try to do it again unless there are multiple, which there are, or at least two in that lane. One went top, and now I was interested in not having my escape be cut off here. So this is my escape. So I'm like move up here to see if I can do something, slow them down a little bit more, or whatever. That was a really good mark because it gives me much more information on how much time I have to try to get out before I potentially get pinched. But I move up and I'm like, nope, they're already wide on both sides and I need to get out, especially because of how important that hill is to hold. I end up using a drop. I'm pretty sure this was for me. But they wasted a drop, which is great, for us. But now you're stuck. You're in the position that I was trying to get out of, right? So I was trying to get out before I got stuck in this area while this player was trying to shoot from one side, and then the Lonnie, I guess, was wide and was preventing me from getting out. Yeah, I felt so when I'm in a position like that where there are multiple players in front of me, I feel like I absolutely have to trade damage to give myself the opportunity of maybe getting a kill. And then even if I get a down on a player that's in the front, it gives me a much greater chance of getting out of a situation like that if I'm getting like 3v1 or whatever. But that often means that I have to actually be really hurt, and that was a really good frag. But because we're down in players, like I feel like I have to play more risky, and so that's that. From my perspective here, it looks like one of those situations where I'm like trying to trade damage with people who are in the front, so that I can give myself better odds of kind of getting out. But if we die a lot, then there's a much lower chance that I'd be able to do as much, right? Something like that. But this hill's super dead. So you should just recognize this. This hill's super dead. We're kind of on the opposite side of the map of where next is. We want to be flying over there and getting over there. Really, as soon as you recognize that the hill is dead, plus there are multiple players here. So you saw there were at least two players here. This push is really hard to do even if there are one person. And yeah. So it doesn't necessarily matter so much if we die here trying to get out, but we really need to be rotating as soon as possible. This hill is super dead. And we have an object permanence moment, and as soon as you got that amount of damage on them, you need to be like playing up on them, because if you're stuck in this situation, well, if I'm stuck in this situation, then well, I wouldn't be, because I'd be pushing them, but I'm not gonna. I wouldn't want to have my time wasted like this, being stuck on the other side of the map, because my time would be worth way more than theirs. So they're getting a lot of value by keeping, well, me stuck, but even other players as well, because they're going to be generally pretty coordinated, or much more coordinated, and if you don't have all your players together, then you have less opportunities to break up their coordination, right? So, I mean, pretty much the other team is always better as a team. But we're already up, like, I mean, she was hurt, maybe 45% or something like that. maybe 40%. And so you had more than enough time to like get up there and get shots on them if they expose themselves at all, and then get like the second follow-up shotgun shot to try to kill them. But you don't want to be stuck here. Yeah, that was a pretty interesting play, getting the flash on this cover, and then they ended up being on the right side when you had the angle on the right. But still, like, you know, almost 20 seconds ago or so, you wanted to have rotated over there because you actually got stuck in a position where you're fighting like a 1v in a disadvantage against this player, even though you could have chained up with teammates and probably out-rotated the other team, where all your damage and your positioning would be worth, 3 times more or so than any individual player on the other team, because you have the position and you're close to teammates. You're all able to like shoot for each other and get revives and such. But they ended up, getting off the hill, and then you sort of got stuck across the map in like a 1v where they arguably had a bit of an advantage. I know you had damage on them, but the position that they had on you nullified the damage that you started with in the beginning, because of the place, the spot that they got to. If you had like 40% damage on them and you were both out in the open when they turned around, then yeah, it was like, it'd be an even fight, except you would be up 40% in damage, right? But they had cover, and it was like a pretty good cover relatively far away from you. So that damage is worth almost nothing. The amount of time that you spend getting over to next is worth like 10 times more, or more than that. More than 10 times more than any damage you'd get across the map with a snub like that. So we're still like super booking it over to next. It does make some sense to hold here, but you want to be checking your left side, especially when this is smoked and you don't have an angle. If anyone popped out here, you wouldn't be able to get much damage on them. That's the very first thing that you want to do, is check your wide left to see if anyone's coming up through the middle. And if they're not, then you'd go wide to the right and start moving towards the hill, towards teammates, but also wide enough where lancering could make a little bit more sense, because if you make it up to this corner, then you would have your shotgun out if anyone comes up to the top of the stairs there. So this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And you're like lefty flipped when you're on like a right-hand corner. Yeah, this is okay. You want to get to a teammate when you're hurt like that, and you're up a kill at least. And now you can start playing up a bit more aggressively, yeah. And now, as a team, we would consider trying to go and block the spawn that's down there by the wall talk. But if you're here and there's a player that like spawns, well, the M-bar spawn was, I mean, I don't know. That's just, if we end up spawning M-bar, then it's going to block that corner spawn, and they'll spawn like over here, basically. But if they get M-bar, then they'll also have like that spawn over there, and they'll be a bit closer. And that's a better direction to push from and retake from than this side. So that's another reason to go block down where Boltok is on that side of the map. It's not only is it kind of, I mean, maybe it's closer, maybe it's equidistant, but really this side is where you want to push spawns to, because this is all one super long choke. This is all kind of somewhat out in the open a bit. But then when they push down the line towards hill down there, they're taking an absolute massive, just so much damage. And there's not a whole lot that they can actually do. They need to have like at least 2 extremely good set flashes and 1 really good smoke that's kind of like on the middle of the hill and probably towards like the very beginning of that back alley that's sort of inside the hill, so that you push someone away from holding that with a shotgun or something. But it's like, so it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to retake. But yeah, they were all pushed to this spawn over here, which is huge. Yeah, good being wide. Want to keep getting marks whenever you can. But you want to make sure that you kind of prioritize being in this area much more, because again, if they push up here, if there's anyone in this corner and they push up here, you can get really meaningful damage on them. But then also, again, they're highly prioritized because they're so much closer to teammates and the objective. And anytime you're not aiming on a player and you're shooting, obviously you're not going to be dealing damage, so it's like wasted ammo. But that player's in a really bad position. They shouldn't really be there. Like, even if they're playing for drop or whatever, you can pretty much prevent them from picking if they get up to basically this host spot or have like 2 people crossing. I mean, you kind of need 3 people to cross to prevent them from getting it, but if you have 2 people up there, you can usually get a third if you have the hill. Okay, so now they're going to be waiting for an active. And so if you're in the middle of being up here and they shoot an active into the center, you can't get out, which is, you know, kind of, well, it's kind of okay. If they use a drop here at this spot, especially towards the very end of the hill, that's fine. If they use a drop as they're pushing towards the hill and they get like a hill and then a lot of space to like be able to retake, then they'd get a decent amount of value from the drop. But them using an active, like spending the time to get an active and then using the active on the player up here while the hill's almost dead is like, it's kind of like that active or that drop that was used by JC10 on the hill, the M-bar hill towards the beginning of the game, where it's just like a non-factor and they're kind of wasting it. Yeah, and then Mario's pushing by themselves because they're like, okay, I want to spawn somewhere else so that I can try to fight somewhere else. I'm giving myself any look at all at trying to push this and try to get kills, because otherwise where they are right now is relatively useless. So it's kind of understandable. But if they push up here and they die and then their team is over in the top corner, like where they spawned last time, then they're really far away from where next hill is, which is M-bar. And then it would have been worth potentially considering literally just like running through the middle. But either way, I kind of understand they're in a bad position there. So, you know, Cowboy or the Baird has frags. You're trying to rotate earlier to here. This one's worth like, you know, 35 or whatever. Should have been there probably a bit earlier, but if there are any players that are waiting to push the current hill, then you want to have like a really strong advantage. So if, like, you know, I were there with that advantage there on the old hill, then I could easily hold a 1v, you know, against whoever. If we have like 2 players there on old and we're holding, you know, that position, then I rotate over in X, and, you know, that could be pretty good too. But even if we just have one over there, some random person who's just like getting some points and then they get pushed, even if they die, it's not really that big of a deal. Yeah, it probably would have made sense to kind of like rotate earlier again. And I guess that's the position that I was in. So it looks like I was kind of over where the old hill was. But I think it's because I was waiting to get a kill on whoever's waiting to like try to push. But if I'm trying to get out and I get crossed in the back, that kind of sucks. So I can understand that more. If I don't have a revive, then I could get crossed from the front and have already taken like 3 points of damage or something from the back as I was moving away and giving them a pinch. But if I'd rotated much earlier and I was way far away from Mario, I think if I were here like 10 seconds ago, I think that would have been better than waiting on the Dom to push or Mario to push and then rotating over. And we're down a player, and Mario feels like he needs to, try to make a play, hoping he has damage on players / people here to help revive or whatever. But again, pushing is like almost impossible in a lot of places on this map, and this is no different. He didn't have a teammate, so basically if you don't up A and get a gib on someone, you're just dying, and even if you get a gib, you're probably just going to die anyway. And they're getting cross angles here, but that's kind of okay because playing the back of next and having the back of next is really strong, and them having a cross angle from up here is not that big of a deal. So here in this position, I would rather prioritize getting to the back of the U hill or whatever, instead of like swapping to whatever player is on the off angle and then trying to put pressure on them, because most of your team is doing something else. Yeah, now we're getting pushed. But yeah, this is good. Instead of pushing that Lonnie, you did turn around and then cut back and try to help out here. And now we're fighting that. It's huge. And now it can make a little bit more sense, even though there's no strong reason to push this player, but they are by themselves. So if you move forward and put yourself in a more of an aggressive position, then it does signal the rest of the team to kind of move up, just as long as you're not like fully committing to it. It's like sliding at someone, and if you start taking a lot of damage, then you'll like kind of back roll, but you're at least trying to like signal to the rest of the team that, hey, there's a player here, even though I have them marked. Try to get the team on the same page to try to play this player after this last one was killed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Posture forward, take a lot of damage, you back roll. You're kind of doing it again, except they have 2 players now. So if you are going to play the front man, it does make a lot of sense to try to look for an opening and try to get a gib. Just ended up working out in that particular situation. Yeah, now you want to be up here on this window like a second ago, 2 seconds ago, be already have moved up to at least here, or at least here, probably here. And then this is like the primary position that you would take, because you're not doing anything on this spot. So any time that you're spent here is more wasted. Still wasted. And now at least you're helping, trying to prevent a push if they end up going through this choke, which is really good. But if there's no one actively pushing, you want to be closer up. But if it looks like they're all like postured up and they're like ready to actually make the push, you've already done all the damage and stifled their push as long as possible by being close in an advantage position. Then if you're on your own right here, you'd probably be the first one that they'd play for. And then when they're about to push, then you'd want to like move back to here and try to get your right hand. But if they're not like set up like that or whatever, and you feel like you can, or you have the space to move up, then you being up in this position is way better. But this is definitely safer. But as long as they're not like about to push, then being up there is better. it just does take a little bit longer to get to this position. So if you're already here, then that's helpful. But you know. But now, you know, if you know you have a player around here that's looking, then you can like move up to this wall and look downward, and then it makes sense to move up if you know after their before their push, as they're like stacking up, getting ready to push, and then when they've kind of stacked up and it looks like they're about to push, then you come back, and then after their push, you'd move up again and try to see what's going on, because you now have space if we're up in players, which is exactly what I'm doing. By the way, I'm sort of like looking around and seeing what space I can grab to like slow down subsequent pushes, get damage on who I can when I can, and then when things look like they're a little bit more dangerous, then I'll come back because I've spent, or I put myself in a position to slow down their pushes.
It is the sound of a million human voices begging for mercy. Delicious.
So I think I've explained I think a lot of the biggest factors in that game for both sides, really. I think for COG it was like this map is super early rotations. Both sides had some really big problems with early rotations, like really big problems with early rotations, and then because of this map and the hills on this map, and then playing for power weapons and then using the power weapons effectively. It was a little bit more obvious on the COG side that they were wasted or misused or something like that. And then in a lot of the game, the COG team died in a bunch of places where they were kind of forced to spawn in really bad locations. Yeah, a lot of the pushes, they were split, not like ready to get revives quite as often as like the last map, for example, Regency. Yeah. I mean, this map is literally almost entirely, which is why I have it practically permabanned. This map is almost entirely very early rotations, and then abusing the advantages, the defending advantages, and then if you have power weapons, you're able to use them extremely effectively. So every like it's much more obvious that like every frag use is a completely stifled and destroyed push, 4-man push. Every M bar is practically the same. Every drop very much is the same. The advantages that you get from using power weapons, especially on the defending side, are even more powerful, and you're able to use them pretty effectively to get future power weapon pickups as well. And even if you're on the back foot with a lot of AoE pickups, so like drop, if you're pushing into a lot of the hills, you have some space to do that, but in a lot of hills you don't have really great angles for using them, which is another reason why like the early rotations are really strong. You're kind of often like either you're at low ground and you're close, like in the right range to use the drop shot, for example, if you're pushing the top corner hills. Um, so you don't have good vision, or if you're pushing the bottom corner hills and you have drop shot, then you can have vision, but you're a bit far away from the two main directions that you'd try to use drop from on the hill. There's only like a couple of places where that isn't the case as much. So if the bottom corner hills and you're pushing from like the M bar lane and you have drop in like the God spot, the side of the God spot, right? Like in the middle of the map, really high up. You can see a lot of the bottom corner hills from there and have pretty good angles with drop. But everywhere else, you're like really far or you don't have good vision. So it's like predominantly super early rotations, and it means that if the if stacks are able to kind of exploit that very well, then they're really really hard to beat and break out because it's not difficult to hold them once you have players or a team that's set up and crossing. All right, so I think that's that one.